In the United States, you can actually call up neo-Nazi groups. They have websites. So I rang them up and said, how are your members doing in the US military? And all of them said, we've never had it so good. This is a big story, and one that really contradicts the fairy tale narrative of the war on terror, which was that Britain and America were taking freedom and democracy to Iraq, because you don't take freedom and democracy using neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
Now, today's content comes from a fellow YouTuber by the name of Politics Joe. I'm gonna post the full link to his video down below so you can go check it out. But basically, as you can see from the thumbnail and the title, this episode is going to talk about how white supremacy has infiltrated the United States military and why it's not a good time for anybody that's black, or probably anybody of color, but mainly I'm harping in on black folks, why we should not be in the US military right now. Let's talk about it.
So in the United States, you can actually call up neo-Nazi groups. They have websites. So I rang them up and said, how are your members doing in the US military? And all of them said, we've never had it so good. Our members can get in with swastikas, they can get in with SS bolts. After that initial revelation, I thought, well, this is a big story, and one that really contradicts the fairy tale narrative of the war on terror, which was that Britain and America were taking freedom and democracy to Iraq, because you don't take freedom and democracy using neo-Nazis and white supremacists.
No more DEI, no more dudes in dresses, no more climate change worship or social justice or political correctness. We're done with all of that.
I started interviewing veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan who were neo-Nazis. One of them, Forrest Fogarty, who I went to meet in Tampa, Florida, told me that his commanders not only knew that he was a neo-Nazi, but told him that he liked the fact he was a neo-Nazi because he was a better warrior and they'd send him on the hardest missions. And I heard this again and again and again. You don't need to be too much of a genius to work out what happens if you hand white supremacists an M4 and an M16 rifle and send them to a country full of brown people where there is basically legal impunity. But the other more scary part now for Americans is all these people are now back home in the US, and they didn't go to Iraq or Afghanistan because they believed in the stated mission of those wars. They went there because they said this to me, we wanted to get training in weapons courtesy of the US taxpayer. So they have that, and now they're back in the United States. And in all, we're talking about millions of veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. This is a huge, huge problem that will play out in America over the coming decades.
Now, I will say, I never had any intentions or any ideas, thought never crossed my mind about joining the United States military. Sorry, it just didn't. Not gonna apologize, but it didn't. And it's hard. I'm gonna say this on an unrelated note. It's hard for us as black people to be patriotic about this country because we know this entity exists, right? So they tell us one of the most patriotic things you could ever do is join in the United States military. But as a black person, there have been harassment complaints. There have even been unalivings in the military. Friendly fire, as they used to say, or probably still do. I don't know what the terminology is, against other Americans. But in my perspective, I am coming from you. I am telling you this from a black lens. I'm telling you this from a black perspective. This is what makes it hard for me as a black man. I can't speak for every other black person. I'm not speaking for every single black person. I can't do that. But this type of stuff right here is what makes it hard for me to even think about being patriotic about this country. This country glorifies its military, and you have these type of elements within it. You know, America is not a fully white country. You do have people from all backgrounds, all walks of life that are patriotic. But then you have elements like this hiding out within the military. Now, how much of this stuff is actually being exposed? This man is from a different country coming here to expose this. Not saying no one else has ever uncovered this. This is, we've known that this thing exists. But the fact that it's being pointed out by someone who isn't even from this country, that says a lot. As a black man, again, it was always going to be hard for me to even think about being patriotic to this country. People will call me unpatriotic while completely overlooking the fact that this man literally just told you that there are neo-Nazis, there's white supremacists in our military, going all over the world, fighting on our behalf. Well, I'll be the first to say it. Not even trying to be controversial, but those soldiers don't represent me, and I'm an American. They don't represent me. If I had it my way, they wouldn't be over there I have to really be careful about what I'm saying. I wouldn't send them in harm's way. Let's just put it that way. I wouldn't have started a war with Iran, no matter who asked me. Take with that information what you will. But as a black man, we knew this existed. I know the history. I know how black people mysteriously came up unalive during some of these wars, and it wasn't from the people we was fighting. So, again, this isn't nothing new. But I'm going to play another clip.
I wanted to find out if the neo-Nazi and white supremacists I was interviewing were telling the truth, because there is a certain amount of bravado amongst veterans that needs to be checked. So I rang recruitment offices across the United States, covered up for the fact I'm British by saying I'd married an American, and said I wanted to join the US military. I said, can I come in and have a meeting? The only problem is I've got a swastika on my arm. Now, none of them said that would be a bar to enlistment. Most said, that's fine. Others said, I'm not sure what that is. So then I realized that this was a policy that was coming down from the brass and the Pentagon itself, that the regulations that are in place for obvious reasons weren't being enforced, and the recruiters weren't being trained in what to spot, because tattoos is the best way you can spot someone's extremism, because most people don't go into a recruitment office and say I'm a neo-Nazi because they know they're going to get barred. And then I was talking to investigators themselves who were telling me, well, we've seen cases of neo-Nazis and alerted their commanders of their units to it, and they've done nothing. In fact, they've tried to actually persecute the people that were blowing the whistle on this problem. This is another facet of the US military that you start to understand, is that when things go wrong, they always blame it on the individual soldier, because they want to take the attention away from the brass itself and the commanders and the political leaders. But actually, this was a policy that was coming right from the top. None of them have faced any kind of accountability for it. And if you look at local newspapers in the United States, which I do, you see that a lot of violence being perpetrated in the US at a low level is linked to the veteran community, and actually linked to the active duty community as well. So around bases, there's murders, there's drug trafficking, there's criminal activity. And often if you read these reports, you'll see further down the report that they'll say this person was a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, or they're actually serving on the base. The problem now is that this problem has been institutionalized.
So in a previous clip, the one before the one I just played, he was able to call neo-Nazi groups, get in touch with them. Don't know how. I would even begin to know how to do that. I wouldn't want to do that anyway. And then in this clip, he gets in touch with recruiters, says he wants to join. He has all these anti-black symbols. They basically say it's not a problem at all. It's policy. These decisions come from the top, which is a true representation of this administration. This is we've been saying Trump has been racist and his administration has been racist for a reason. See, this man is telling you, like, maybe people will listen if it comes from someone who looks like them, because we know they don't listen to black folks. But this is the type of stuff that's going on within the military. It's policy. They want these people, they want these soldiers in the military. You know why? They're having a hard time recruiting people. Most of millennials and Gen Z, definitely these Gen Alphas, nobody wants to fight a war anymore. Nobody wants to fight. Most people just want to live their lives. We struggling as it is. Nobody wants to go and try to, do harm in other countries. For what? We got problems here we need to fix. He also mentions that tattoos are like, and everybody knows this, it's the best way to find out where someone is. It's symbolism. You're part of a group, people get tattooed. I don't have to tell y'all this. People know this. This is common sense. And there were people that alerted the top brass, and the top brass did nothing. They don't do anything because, again, it's policy. It's like, hey, you guys are letting white supremacists in the military. They're like, yeah, we know. It's the policy. No, we're not going to do anything about it. As a matter of fact, we're going to crack down on you. We're going to crack down on the whistleblower. And then when these white supremacists and whatever, when they do what they do, then the top brass has all the deniability. It's just this soldier, because no one takes accountability. It's the truest representation of what we've been seeing in this administration. And from a black lens, that's what we see in white people all the time. Nobody wants to take accountability for their actions, but they expect to hold us accountable for whatever it is that we've done. And I'll tell you, we as black people have never done anything at the scale of what y'all have done globally, worldwide. We haven't. Black people ain't never dropped no atomic or nuclear bomb on anyone. We've never invaded anyone else's country. Now, black people, now you could say, oh, well, there were black people in the military. Those black people joined the military. Those black people were headed up under someone else's command. And even if it was a black general, that black general had to take his orders from who? Most likely a white president. Now you say, well, you had Obama. Yeah, okay. Obama. President Obama. Half white, half black president. The first one. He's not a representation of all of us. I'll tell you that right now. Last time I checked, this is still a white majority country, right? Who were all Obama's advisors? Who was all his national security advisors? Who were the people that was giving him the advice, telling him what to do, advising him? We all know the president is a puppet. We all know that there are backers behind the scenes. There are people pulling the strings. There are people that these presidents listen to. And I'm not going to say anything more about that. But then he talked about there are all of these crimes being committed around these bases. Trafficking and, murder. All these things that are happening around these bases. Things started getting worse when you start letting the worst in your military. But that's another conversation y'all don't want to have. Let's get back to it.
Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, who was previously the Secretary of Defense, but changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, which is more honest. I'll give him credit for that. He is the embodiment of this problem. During the War on Terror, when I was investigating these soldiers, I was trying to find evidence to alert people in positions of power to what was going on. Now, he proudly displays far-right and white nationalist tattoos on his arm. He's got a Jerusalem cross, which is a neo-Crusader imagery. He's got Deus Vult, which means God wills it in Latin, which is another piece of Crusader imagery. He's got Kafir written in Arabic on his arm, which is his signal that he sees Islam as a civilizational threat. So these are all things that in normal times you wouldn't even be able to get into the US military with, but he's the most powerful person in the Pentagon, which is a crazy situation. Also in 2021, it's reported that he wasn't even allowed to serve during Joe Biden's inauguration because one of his fellow soldiers alerted his superiors to his extremist tattoos. So you've got this guy at the head of the most powerful military in human history. And in Congress, when he was being confirmed, he said, we're no longer going to focus on extremism because it's a political witch hunt. So that was an invitation to neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other extremists to enter the US military. He also said, we're no longer going to deal with these, quote, stupid rules of engagement, which is a signal to the hundreds of thousands of soldiers serving under him that they can commit war crimes with impunity. So we're in a very, very scary situation where the complete deregulation of the US military, the complete discarding of regulations has now become institutionalized and the extremists are at the wheel. We're talking about a country, the US, which spends as much on its military as the next 10 countries combined. It has 800 military bases around the world. It has 11 carrier battle groups, which can go anywhere at any time. This is a force that has not had any kind of precedent in history. And when it's ruled by someone like Pete Hegseth, that is a worry for every single human being on the planet.
And with that last point, he makes a very great point. America has the largest, well, maybe not the largest, but the strongest military in the world. Now, what happens when you put a bunch of white supremacists in charge of the strongest military in the world? You get what you're getting. Now, I'll be honest, y'all kind of getting punched in the mouth right now by Iran. So you underestimated their capabilities. And now, people are saying that you can't win a war to be the strongest military in the world, and you can't win a war. So, it's a tough look, Criticizing the military is always going to get you negative attention from regular people and people that are above them. But the facts are the facts. I honestly don't think they're reporting all the casualties. I don't think they're giving an accurate depiction of how many people we're actually losing over there. And I mean, what do you want me to say? This guy makes some really good points. Pete Hegseth, or whatever the hell his name is, changes the Department of Defense's name to the Department of War. I mean, if that wasn't a telltale sign to, what they plan to do, it hasn't been the Department of War since after World War II. They changed it to the Department of Defense. Then he said something about Pete Hegseth not being able to serve in 2021 during President Biden's inauguration because it was pointed out about his tattoos. So wait a minute. Here's what I'm trying to understand. They wouldn't let him serve in 2021 because of his tattoos, because of his affiliations. His affiliations clearly tell you what his mindset is. So he wasn't allowed to serve then. But now you make him the head of the damn Pentagon? The tattoos ain't went nowhere. The mindset ain't went nowhere. It's the same shit. And then going to change the rules of engagement. Changing the rules of engagement is insane. Like all these right-leaning people, their whole thing is to get rid of regulations. I'm going to tell you that is not good for anything. I'm going to do a video about this in the future, talking about why we actually need regulations. Yes, there has to be a balance between not over-regulating things, but regulations are needed because humans can't be trusted. That's why we have laws. There needs to be regulations. We have to have regulations on rules of engagement, because now it makes sense. You let all these white supremacists in the military and then you take the gloves off. Oh, don't worry about the rules of engagement. Go out and live out your white pride fantasy, because all it is full of death and destruction anyway. Anytime I hear y'all talking about white pride or white power or white heritage, or all I hear is a black man, all I hear is death and destruction. You want to be proud of that? Go ahead. That's your culture. That's not my culture. I don't know what the fuck y'all got to be proud about anyway. I'm gonna leave that alone. And I know that's gonna piss some people off, but I don't care, because we are talking about white supremacists in the fucking military. In the military, which I might add, if you look at their actual advertising, they're always strictly advertising towards who? My community. They want black people to join the military. Every time I see one of them damn military commercials, I see a black person or black people in that military commercial. They have been constantly trying to get us to jump in there. And of course, there's a racket between, hey, we're going to make college so fucking unaffordable. We're going to make college tuition through the fucking roof. Hey, join the military. We'll pay for it. They're just a dealer for your education. That's the trick. That's how they've been trying to get people. Well, no, that's not trying to. That's how they've been getting people in the military for years. Hey, you want to go to college? You want to further your education? Hey, join the military. You won't have to worry about it. But look what you're doing when you're joining that military. I'm not making this to say people shouldn't join the military. I'm making this to say black people probably should be more aware about joining the military. And if you feel the way about that, after hearing what this man is saying, then you truly don't give a fuck about black people. Because as a black person, how could I personally advocate for my son or anybody else's son or daughter to join the military? Black people, how can I advocate for black people to join the military when I know that this is going on? Sometimes it's okay to see things from other people's lenses. Sometimes you should actually take time to use that word that some white people don't like, empathy. Sometimes it's okay to empathize with other people. I would say a lot of times, actually, when it makes sense. But I'm going to continue and play some more of his video.
I would say the MAGA movement is an outgrowth of the war on terror. Because if you look at Trump's pitch, he presented himself as an outsider that was going against Washington. We know that was rubbish, but that was how he sold himself. And a lot of it was about going against the war on terror. And a lot of it was about going against nation building and foreign wars and putting America first. And this is the same rhetoric as Mussolini making Italy great again. And it was the same conditions after the First World War and after the war on terror. So I'd say you couldn't have MAGA really without the war on terror. You just have to look at the power of the US military within American society. I would say it's by far the most important institution in US society. Half the congressional budget goes on the US military. According to some estimates, $1.4 trillion a year. You'll talk about millions of people serving in it. So in that situation, how can you not have dynamics and trends within the US military not percolate out into wider society? And we have seen it. Vigilantism, violence, fascism, all that has been allowed to fester in the US military, and it through the MAGA movement has percolated out into wider society. And also the political culture that was created by the war on terror, the heightened paranoid culture that we're under attack from outsiders or internal enemies, principally Muslims. That was all started during the war on terror, and Trump has seized the opportunity with an elan, but he is just taking advantage of what was already put in place. Also, the massive concentration of power in the executive branch. During the war on terror, Dick Cheney infamously started what was called the imperial presidency, where he tried to concentrate power in the executive branch, bypass the legislative branch. Trump's recent crimes, including Venezuela and Iran, no one even proposed that this was going to go for a vote. It wasn't even thought. And that is a consequence of that imperial presidency, which Bush put in place and was carried on by Obama. So MAGA and the monster that heads the movement is inextricably linked to the war on terror. The reason that link is not made is because the war on terror was a bipartisan catastrophe and crime, and they don't want to talk about their own role in creating Trump.
Now, he said without the war on terror, we probably wouldn't have had MAGA. I, as an American who's lived here his entire life and who knows the history of this country, I'm at liberty to disagree a little bit. Most people in MAGA, I would venture to say most people, people will try to disprove me and say, well, not everybody in MAGA is a white supremacist or racist. Not through my lens. Prove me wrong. As far as I'm concerned, if you MAGA, you're a white supremacist until proven otherwise. But that element has always existed in this country. It was building up. Like, everybody already knows the shatter point was when President Obama got elected into office. That's when they kicked everything into overdrive. Like, oh my God, we can't have this black man being in the most powerful seat in this country. So of course, that's when the Tea Party started. That's when all the racism started becoming more and more out in the open. And then Trump just fueled the fire by trying to challenge President Obama's birth certificate. Everybody remembers the birther movement, I'm sure. Or maybe they try to memory hole it. He talked about the military being the most important institution in the United States. Of course it is. Of course it is. The military is the only institution where they don't make cuts. And like he mentioned, it's bipartisan. It's Democrat and Republicans, which is one of the many fucking reasons the two-party system is a problem, which is why we need many other parties to join the fray. Then he talked about Dick Cheney starting the imperial presidency. Basically, the president bypassing Congress, ignoring the Constitution. Yes, he mentioned Obama was a part of it as well. Of course, President Obama is not exempt. You're not going to hear me caping for this man because he was known as the drone president and also the deporter-in-chief. Isn't that crazy? But the imperial presidency, basically bypassing Congress, basically allowing the president to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. Of course, we used to have rules. See, the Republican Party, clearly, their mandate is against regulation because they want to be able to do what they want to be able to do when they want to be able to do it. That's the white man's philosophy. That's how they've always tried to govern in this country. And again, you can hate me for saying what I'm saying. I'm just telling you what it is from a black lens. And I don't speak for every black person, but I'm speaking from my perspective. You don't have to agree with it. This is America. You can scroll off, click off the video. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You never have to see me again. I would prefer it, actually. They don't like to talk about the war on terror because, yes, it was bipartisan. Both parties played a significant role in this. And that's why you get a lot of people saying it's just two sides of the same coin. That's why you get a lot of people saying, what's the point of voting? They all do the same things anyway. They're all taking money from the same people. The lobbyists lobby on Republican and the Democratic side, which is why I'm not a Republican or I'm not a Democrat. But that's neither here nor there. So, to close this out, like I said, I'll put the link to his full video down into the description. You can go check it out for yourself. I thought this was interesting, an interesting take and perspective to see this British man break down what he sees going on in the United States military and pointing out the white supremacy, doing investigative work and pointing out the hypocrisy. They say America first. I always question when people say America first, like, who's America? Because there's not just one America. There are multiple Americas. That American flag that you see, and I've stated so many times in the past, that American flag that you see doesn't symbolize the same thing to everybody. That flag means something completely different to different people, different groups of people. If you've been oppressed under that American flag, you're not going to see it in a good light. If you've had prosperity and everything went your way and you had a fabulous life under the American flag, then you see it as, oh, you're going to pledge your allegiance to it and everything else. But then somehow you get to be Christian, because I'm pretty sure God didn't want you pledging your allegiance to a country. Pretty sure God wanted you to pledge your allegiance to him. Oh, okay. That's not my realm. Sorry. I probably shouldn't step in that lane. I shouldn't challenge you with facts, right? So, as I do all the time when I end my video, I would literally just tell black people to stay woke. Yes, you can stay woke if you're somebody who's not black, if you actually are down with our cause and actually support black people, because black people actually support America. We just don't support America the way it's being ran. And if you look at the history of it, it's really mainly always have been controlled and ran by white people. I don't even count President Obama's 8 years in office, because he was listening to white men. He had white advisors. Sure, he had some black folks sprinkled in his administration, but he was still listening to his white puppet masters. Take it what you will. You don't have to like it. So until next time, salute, stay woke, and be safe out there. Everybody, but especially black people.